My name is Holly Weiss, and the outreach specialist for Relay Colorado, who is Lori Dean, is also on this call today. And we are going to be giving an overview of Relay Colorado and the different telecommunication relay services, which are known as TRS. I am a state of Colorado employee. I work for the Department of Regulatory Agencies, and then within DORA is the Public Utilities Commission. So I am specifically with the Public Utilities Commission, and then the program within the Public Utilities Commission is Relay Colorado. And then Lori is a contract specialist who contracts with Relay Colorado to provide outreach services for the program all over the state. So I want to just start it off by explaining what are telecommunication relay services. So TRS is essentially the ability to communicate between those who are using what is known as a TTY or a teletypewriter, caption telephone, video phone, or some other type of device. They are using that through a relay service to be able to communicate with individuals who are using a traditional telephone. And typically those who are using the relay service either are deaf, hard of hearing, deaf blind, or have a speech disability. TRS is in all 50 states. It is actually a requirement through the ADA that states provide TRS. How they provide TRS is up to each individual state. A state agency, such as the Public Utilities Commission, can decide to take on that program, which Colorado has done for more than 20 years. Or if a state agency or a nonprofit organization chooses not to take on that program, then that role actually is given to the telecom providers to be able to provide the relay services. So as far as I know, I believe there are 48 states in which their state provides the service. The only state that I know of that does not is Michigan. So Michigan's telecom companies are actually the ones who provide TRS services. So TRS is compensated either through state or federal funding, depending on whether it's considered analog, which is what Relay Colorado is, or internet protocol, IP-based or internet-based. And in that case, those services are compensated through the federal fund, which is under the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC. TRS has no cost to an end user, though. So no matter what the service is, whether they're using, and we'll go into detail on the different types of TRS, but no matter what type of TRS they are using, this is a free service to the end user. So just an introduction of Relay Colorado here in the state of Colorado. We were established in 1989 through legislation. At that time, only traditional relay was provided, and we'll explain what traditional relay is versus other types of relay. Sprint Relay back in 1989 was our original first TRS vendor that was providing the services. They provided services all the way up to 2012, and then there was a 3-year break when AT&T took over, and then T-Mobile, what is now known as T-Mobile, took back over in 2015, and they are the current provider for the state of Colorado. The statute that established TRS also established what is currently known as the Telephone Users with Disability Fund. And that is a fund that is established to support different programs. It supports Relay Colorado. It supports the Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing and Deaf Blind. It supports reading services for the blind, and it supports the Talking Book Library. So essentially, if you ever look on your phone bill, whether it's a landline bill or a wireless bill, you will notice a surcharge. It may be called Telephone User with Disability. It may be called Relay. There is some type of charge, and the Public Utility Commission collects those funds. That fund, those dollars go into the Telephone User with Disability Fund, and that is used to support several programs throughout the state. In 2008, as technology started to shift, we not only provided traditional relay, but we added caption telephone to one of the services that we provide as a state agency. As of 2021, T-Mobile no longer provides caption telephone, and so that service was then contracted out to Hamilton Relay, who is another nationwide provider of relay services. Historically, the surcharge that I mentioned was only charged to those who had landlines, and that was because at one point in our lives, only thing that existed was landlines. Wireless, voice over IP, those services when this statute was originally written did not exist, so we didn't collect money from them. However, in 2016, with the support of the Commission for the Deaf, Hard of Hearing, and Deafblind and the Independence Center in Colorado Springs, legislation was actually passed, and now that surcharge is charged to anybody with a phone. So whether it be landline, wireless, or voice over IP, they all contribute to that surcharge. The current surcharge is at 3 cents, so it's not a huge burden on an individual person, but considering that in the state of Colorado, we have roughly 6 million access lines, and that essentially just means a handset. So 6 million handsets that get charged that 3 cents, and that's for the year. 6 million handsets in a year get charged that 3 cents. And the money that we collect helps fund almost $4 million worth of different programs. And then in addition to the traditional relay and the caption telephone, in 2015, we added a service called Relay Conference Captioning, which we'll go into. We have a robust outreach program where we provide free training and education to individuals, local and state agencies, nonprofits, business. We train them on how to use relay services and in general, provide training on just working with individuals who have hearing or speech loss. We also want to have a strong presence in the communities that we provide services to. So in addition to providing the services, we also support local deaf, deafblind, hard of hearing, and speech disabled organizations all throughout Colorado. We attend events, we have booths, we support and sponsorship dollars for their events in a variety of different ways. We host our own events. And then lastly is we provide hands-on training to individuals who can benefit from some type of communication access technology. It doesn't necessarily have to be relay. It could be an individual who is struggling how to turn on the captioning on their iPhone or their Android. So, you know, we meet people where they are. So oftentimes at our booths, Lori will literally be working with a customer, walking them through their phone, showing them how to turn on the different accessibility features in their phones. A lot of our times at booth are actually spent doing that because oftentimes those members don't have anywhere else to go to get that type of information. So this is a quick rundown of the 3 services that Relay Colorado specifically provides, which is the traditional relay that I had mentioned is connected to a TTY and an analog phone. These services have steadily been declining over the past 2 decades, though. And I do want to show you a quick graph of what this looks like. So back in 2000, a year we were averaging 4 million minutes every year. And now, as of 2023, you can see there has been a steep decline. And so this is just to show that traditional TTY relay services are severely on the decline, and a lot of people are not still using those services. Now, there are still those who are using traditional TTYs. Those may be those who do not have access to broadband, whether they live in a rural area and they don't have the infrastructure, or it could be for those who are low income and cannot afford high-speed internet. So even though we see this really steep decline, the state of Colorado is committed to continuing to provide these services, while at the same time we work on strategies for taking those individuals who are still using it and trying to migrate them over to more modern, updated technology. That has its challenges, though, because oftentimes senior citizens who have been using these technologies for almost 30 years may be hesitant to want to switch over to an inter-based type of service. So there is a lot of outreach efforts around how we migrate those folks to new and modern technology. TTYs are still the minimum requirement for call centers for 911. So you see that decline and you go, well, do 911 centers even get calls from TTYs? The answer is yes, but not very many. So again, that is why we are trying to work on migrating these folks over to new technologies so that they will continue to have access to important services like 911. And then TTYs involve a third-party communication assistant who is actually relaying the phone call back and forth between two individuals. Caption telephone is the second service that we offer. There is traditional caption telephone, which the state provides, and it's connected through an analog line. And then there is IP caption telephone, which is connected through the internet and can be via mobile app or computer, and that is what the FCC pays for. This does require the user to be able to use their own voice, because while they are reading captions on a screen, they are then speaking back to the other party. And this can include a little bit of a lag time. So just important things to remember if these types of calls are received and they are using a caption telephone, sometimes when you speak back to them, those captions may have a couple second delay. And then relay conference captioning is the service that we added back in 2015. And this allows individuals to reserve live captioning for virtual events. So a webinar, an online training, anything that is through a remote connection, an individual, a nonprofit, a state agency can reserve relay conference captioning, which we call RCC, to provide live captioning on their calls. So in this call, if you were to go down and click those three dots and hit the caption, you would be getting what is called automatic speech recognition technology. It would be taking my voice, using speech recognition technology, and producing captions. That is not what RCC is. RCC is a live captionist, or essentially a stenographer. If you think about in courts, it is a person who is actually using shorthand stenography to take spoken text and put it into captions. And this is, I'll show you a quick video. Let me make sure my audio's turned on for this. I think it is. I don't quite know how to do this in Google Meet, so let's hope it is. Are people able to hear that? No. I know there's something to do in Google Meets where you make it so you can hear the audio.
I think the audio has to come from your computer.
Let me try this one.
In the chat, someone said if you share that tab only, it usually works better for sharing audio.
Okay, also share tab audio. Okay, let's try this.
I wear a lot of different hats. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a student, and I work. To communicate, I sign, text, use email, and now my new favorite, relay conference captioning. Using RCC, I participate fully in conference calls and webinars. It's a service for individuals who are deaf, hard of hearing, or have speech differences.
Relay conference captioning is available for free to residents of Colorado. To learn more, go to relaycolorado.com/RCC.
So again, the woman in the video, it is to be assumed that she is not in the room with those individuals, but she is able to connect to that meeting. And then an offsite captioner is captioning everything that they hear and putting it into text so that that individual can follow along.
I wear a lot of different hats. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a student, and I work. To communicate, I sign, text, use email.
Sorry about that. All right, I will turn it over to Lori.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Well, I am Lori Dean. Like Holly said, I am the outreach specialist for Relay Colorado. I have quite an extensive background with outreach as well as delivering and installing telephones. I worked for about 13 years in Utah with their relay program. And then when we moved here in 2020, Colorado snatched me up and I've been working here since and love it here. But we're going to talk about the calls that you might receive. So with traditional TRS, you have your TTY, and you also have another device called a hearing carryover phone. Now, CapTels have pretty much taken over your hearing carryover phones, but they possibly might still be out there. But again, they're on the decline due to newer technologies that are easier for people to use. So with calls that are placed using the TTY, the person using the TTY would dial 711, and they would be connected to a relay operator or caller communications assistant. And then they would give the number that they wanted to call and the name of the person. And then the caller assistant would then call that person and relay verbally what is being said as well through typing back to the TTY user. And then so that TTY user can read and respond. So there are opportunities for mistakes and miscommunications with this. It's a less natural feeling. You're going through a caller assistant. So if you ever have to take one of those phone calls, then just know that it doesn't feel normal. It doesn't feel natural. And so, just have that patience. But the idea that you might even receive one is really small. But you might receive like a caption phone call. But if you do receive a TTY caller assistant call, then just know that operator is bound by, they privacy, and they cannot, share what's being said. And so, and they're usually really patient with people who have never used these services before. You'll hear words like go ahead or GA or SK, and which is it's stop keying here. I'm a CODA, so that's a child of deaf adults. Both my parents were deaf, and so I grew up using a TTY before there was ever relay. And so, or signal kill is what the SK would be. And so we would just say, go ahead. After everything that we would say, I would type it and I would say GA, or when I finally was able to start using the relay, I would call my parents and I would just say, I would say what I was going to say. And then I would say GA, knowing that was their turn to start talking and responding to what I said. And then when I was done with the conversation, I would say SK, and that would mean I'm done, I'm hanging up, goodbye. It is available 365 days a year, 24/7. So it's always available for those people who would need to use that service. So with the caption telephone service, again, this is a newer technology. It's been around for quite some time, but definitely more people are using those as the hard of hearing community, and those people who have a voice that they can speak and use that phone with. They're loving this option. And so basically the user uses their own voice. So instead of an operator that you're talking to, you're actually talking to the person that you called. And so what they're doing is now they're listening to your voice, and they have options on that cap telephone to be able to adjust the tone and and even some devices, you can actually put your audiogram in there. So it actually regulates to your specific hearing loss. And then they're speaking, and they're able to hear what they can, and what they can't hear, they get to read what they've missed. And so it does help a lot of people feel more confident in making phone calls. And a lot of families who have maybe not heard from their loved one for quite some time on the phone, they are able to, and it is a very typically emotional event when you're able to give that person that opportunity to utilize this caption phone, because now they've gotten back some of their independence. They can make and place phone calls on their own, and so this is a huge thing for them. Captioning is provided by voice recognition. Again, this can lead to misunderstandings. It really just depends on is the person enunciating? Are they speaking too fast, which we all have a tendency to do these days? Do they have an accent that might be a little bit hard to understand? Sometimes the software does not accurately caption those spoken words. So that there can be those instances, and so patience, and it's a learning curve, but patience is greatly appreciated, especially for the CapTel user. You can choose between auto or assisted captions. So with assisted captions, you have a caller assistant who's there, as Holly mentioned, where they will kind of go in and change if there's any issues with the voice recognition. I know that CapTel has changed some things up. So Holly, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think it automatically starts out as auto captions, and it's voice recognized. And so the caller assistant's there just listening to that one side of the conversation, and they cannot hear the other caller that's actually using the CapTel. They can't hear their side of the conversation, only the side that of the non-user. And they will just listen to that and then read what's going on the screen. And then if there's any mistakes or miscommunication at all, the CA will go in and make that that change appropriatly, when it's available. And so that way it does help reduce some of those those misunderstandings. Depending on the captioning service, an additional number may be needed to be dialed to reach the user. This is typically for those people who are not using IP CapTels. So what people used to use back before IP was readily available is a lot of people did not want to dial that second number. They didn't want to dial, it was like a 1-8 something number that they would dial. Then they would have to push the pound sign and then dial their family member or their, whoever they were going to dial. And they didn't like that. And so they would get 2 lines. So that was essentially 2 phone lines, and the captions would go through one and the call would go through the other. And that made it so that the non-CapTel user did not have to dial a second number. Not a lot of people use that for cost issues. Typically, phone lines are pretty costly these days, and so not a lot of people use the two line call. They'll just either use they'll have the IP because they have internet, or the family member will just be fine calling the longer number. But and here's a video for that.
CapTel is the perfect phone for anyone who has difficulty hearing. With CapTel, every call you make or receive is connected through a no-cost captioning service.
Hello, this is Janet.
Hi, Janet. It's Mike returning your phone call.
Just like any telephone call, you talk back and forth with the other party.
The game will be at 1:30 instead of noon.
The captioning service transcribes everything they say, either automatically or with the help of a captioning assistant, for you to read right on the phone. CapTel lets you hear what you can and read what you need to. You won't miss a moment of the conversation.
Okay, we'll see you Saturday. Bye.
Get the best of both worlds, voice and captions, with CapTel.
And so with CapTel, just so a last thing is that you they can do English to English or Spanish to Spanish. There's no translation, you know, so you can't do English to Spanish. And so, so there is that option too if they needed that. And you just have to double click on that side. There you go. So the next call you might receive would be a video relay call. So this is for someone whose primary English or language is ASL, and so they would be calling using their video relay service, usually provided by Sorensen Communications, and that calls are placed using a video phone, a mobile app, or computer software. The sign language interpreter is visible on the screen, and you know, basically there is a more natural feel to the conversation. For both consumers, I would say probably more for the, you know, the user who is actually signing to that interpreter. But sometimes calls can still be mistaken for solicitation, so that is an issue. But I think it's good to be wary about that anyway these days. Hearing consumer, they don't need any other additional equipment or to receive or place a video relay call, so they would call and the video relay service, and they would be connected through voice to an interpreter, and then that interpreter would then call the video relay user and interpret through to them through ASL. And so I have another video for that.
And I will just make a quick point. We're showing Sorensen, but there are several different VRS companies right now. And all of these companies that we're talking about actually have to be certified through the FCC. So they do have to go through a certification process, whether they're providing caption telephone or video relay service. The states also have to get certified to provide all these services as well.
Hey Hannah, how's everything going?
Hey, good news. Ari got 100% on her math test today. I just had to tell you.
Really? Oh wow, that's exciting. Thank you so much for your patience and support.
No problem. I enjoyed teaching her.
Thank you, we appreciate it. Have a good day.
See you after school.
Bye.
And so IP relay is just like using our traditional TRS services. It's just that the user is using a computer or an internet-based device instead of their TTY over the telephone line. So that is the interpreter is, or the not interpreter, the caller assistant is still using their phone device to be able to contact the individual that the person using IP relay is trying to call. So, but yeah, that is, it's pretty much the same thing. Still errors in communication, telecommunication resources for the deafblind community become scarce. There's a lot of information. And Holly, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure, this is Holly. We just added that IP relay is one of the only truly accessible formats of relay for those who are deafblind. So for an individual who has hearing and vision loss, IP relay works really well. back in 2016, it went down to one provider. So we have essentially one provider in the entire country providing this service. And so there are some concerns that if this provider were to leave that industry, it would leave those who are deafblind very much in the lurch for being able to have telecom access. IP Relay works well because it works well with like refreshable Braille devices. They can plug them into their computers and it works well with that. IP Relay, you can also do a lot of like font adjustment. You can change the color of your background. So you have contrasting colors. So this is really great for somebody who has some type of vision loss. So just to be cognizant that, you know, there is one provider of this and it's not heavily used, but the people who do use it, it is very much a lifeline for them. So.
Okay, and then our speech-to-speech program. So speech-to-speech allows individuals who have a speech disability to use their own voice. They're connected to a trained communicative assistant who's trained to understand different speech patterns. And then that communications assistant will then make that phone call for that person. You know, when spoken words become difficult for the user to hear, and to understand, then the CA will assist verbally if it's needed to ensure that you know, the communication is possible and clear between both parties. And so yeah, this is a great service for those who need it. Again, technology has made it so a lot of people who have speech disability are using texting and other ways to communicate. But, you know, there's also another device, kind of like when I talked about our regular TRS, they have an HCO. Well, there's a VCO phone that is out there as well that can be used for those who have a speech disability. And that is where they would actually type what's being said to the operator. The operator would then verbally send that back to, you know, the person who's called. So there are those options. Again, are they being used? Probably not as much as newer technologies. So, and then I have a video for that.
Disfluent speech or stuttering is characterized by repetition of sounds, syllables, or words, prolongation of sounds, and interruptions in speech known as blocks. Individuals who stutter know what he or she wants to say, but has trouble producing a normal flow of speech.
I will go ahead and call the credit union and see if we can get that loan approved.
Roughly 1 million American adults stutter. And while symptoms of stuttering vary throughout the day, they often become more severe when speaking before a group or talking on the telephone. Relay Colorado offers a free telecommunications service called Speech to Speech that makes it more comfortable for a person who stutters to talk on the phone.
Good afternoon. Thank you for calling Advantage Credit Union. This is Donald. How may I help you?
Hello. A person is calling you through Speech to Speech Relay. This is operator 2838. Have you received a speech to speech call before?
No, I have not.
The person who is calling you can hear and has a speech disability. They will speak directly to you and I will repeat what they say.
A specially trained operator revoices the conversation to the person on the other end of the line.
Hi, Nihada. This is Andy Smith, and I was calling to see if our home loan has been approved.
Hi, Nihada. This is Andy Smith, and I was calling to see if our home loan has been approved.
Speech to Speech provides users the opportunity to use the phone comfortably without feeling rushed or anxious. With Speech to Speech, potentially stressful calls to businesses, doctors, and schools can be made with confidence.
Oh, Andy, we have great news. You've been approved for the full amount. Would you like to schedule a time to come in and sign the papers?
Why don't I speak with my wife and see when would be a good day for us to come in and do that?
To learn more about Speech to Speech Relay Service, go to relaycolorado.com or use this service now by calling 711. Make things happen by phone today. Disfluent speech or stuttering .
You think by the third video I'd figure out how to not do that. All right, this is Holly again. And I did want to point out that all the folks that are in those videos are users of the service. So Andy is actually a colleague of mine, and he is somebody who actually uses that relay service. So just some helpful tips around do's and don'ts when having calls with folks, or even just thinking about accommodations, whether this is something that a specific agency offers, or if you are trying to educate people on what their rights are. These are some helpful tips. Advertising what type of access can and will be provided is really crucial. Folks with disabilities always have to go through that extra hoop of reaching out and requesting upon accommodation. So if you have the ability up front to say, interpreters, captioning will be provided, that takes a bit of a burden off folks to then have to be like, okay, I want to attend this, but now I gotta reach out and ask, like, are they willing to provide this service? So putting that up front is always a nice burden to take down from folks. Making it a simple request. If you have the ability to provide some type of accommodation, but you have to, the client has to jump through a bunch of hoops and fill out if it's like, fill out this paper form and then fax it to us, like, you may want to reconsider how you're requesting accommodations be submitted. Something a very simple email, Google form, something that's very easy is always ideal. Just knowing proper tips and etiquette for communicating with individuals. One thing that we've seen, and I'm sure you folks have seen this too, there'll be an interpreter in the room or on the phone. And let's say I am an individual and I receive a phone call from a deaf individual. And then I hear the interpreter and I go, all right, well, tell them that I can be there at 3 o'clock. You don't have to say tell them. You are to assume that you are talking directly to that individual. So just being aware of that, taking that piece out is helpful. If you're in person, always looking at the individual who is not necessarily the voice you hear, but the thoughts from that person, you should be looking at them. It is natural to want to look at the person speaking. And so oftentimes people will look at the interpreter instead of the person doing the actual communicating. Sorry about that. The landscaping folks decided to show up. And then just knowing what's in place with rules for the FCC or state. One really important thing to know, you saw the video relay service. That cannot be used for in-person communication. So if you as an individual have a deaf client and you want to be able to talk to that deaf client, you cannot be like, oh, well, let's call in through the video relay service and you can have that interpreter interpret our call. That is actually prohibited and only can be used for remote locations. So 2 people have to be in completely different locations to be able to use video relay. So that's just what we mean about knowing the rules that are in place for how relay services can be used. And then just requests for accommodations, always making it easy on who to contact for those types of accommodations. Don't make people, do 10 different phone trees to try and finally get to the person they need to talk to make a accommodation. And then, this one is, don't use these relay services as a way for substituting in-person things. We also often hear this, we'll get requests of, oh, well, I'm meeting with a client and they don't, we don't have the funds to hire sign language interpreters, so we're just going to call through the relay service. That may not result in the best outcome. So just being aware of that, trying to, proactively budget for accessibility, to have interpreters, to provide captioning, to do those types of things is really important. And then don't assume what type of accommodations are needed. I've seen folks spend 30 minutes going back and forth about should we do this or that or this, and I'm like, well, did you ask the consumer? Well, no. That is usually your first stop. Ask the consumer, what do you need to effectively participate in this meeting, this training, this webinar, whatever it may be? What do you need? And you might find them, they say, actually nothing. Like I've figured it out. I have my own ways and I'll be able to participate without any accommodation, or they may need an accommodation that you hadn't previously thought of. Some other tips, just speaking to the caller in the same manner you would a traditional caller. You don't, be aware, don't slow down the talk so much that it actually makes it harder for the call to be completed, but just the normal pace. Avoiding abbreviations and terms that may be local, because sometimes the interpreter or the communication assistant, they're probably not based in Colorado. They may be based somewhere else. And so using jargon that only folks in local Colorado might know can be a challenge. If the message that you're receiving seems to contradict what you already know about that caller, ask for clarification. Interpreters are human, so they often make errors when interpreting calls. And so if you have a caller and they say, this is my birth date, but that's not their birth date, you may then ask for clarification, because it could be that the interpreter or the communication assistant misunderstood and they're the ones that gave the wrong information. This is where we talked about the difference between natural feeling and not natural. For TTYs, communication assistants are essentially trained to read verbatim, word for word, what the caller types. VRS is a little bit different. Interpreters have a little bit of flexibility to interpret a call and watch that deaf individual's body language, their facial expressions, to try and match it. Versus a TTY, that communication assistant doesn't see the person on the other end of the call. So that person may be really mad, but your communication assistant may sound like, wow, I am so mad right now. Versus an interpreter who may be able to see the person signing and facial expressions. They may be like, wow, I am so mad right now. And so it's going to be natural versus kind of this not natural feeling. So just things to be aware of. And then Lori already talked about the turn taking that happens with TTYs. And this is just a great tip I love to give for no matter what call you're on. Identifying yourself before you talk. Right now, I think we have almost 60 people on this call, and there's so many little tiny boxes. So if somebody starts talking, like I'm looking around trying to be like, wait, who is that? So it's always nice on these virtual calls to always say, this is Holly, and then talk. So that really helps people who are on the call, who maybe they are hard of hearing or deaf, but maybe they also have some type of other disability where they need to be watching the person talking. So if they know who it is and they can find your name in all the little boxes, that can help them track better. So I always say just get into the habit of that all the time. And then Lori's going to talk a bit about the communications technology program.
Okay, so the CTP, Communications Technology Program, they are under the Colorado Commission for the Deaf, Hard of Hearing, and Deafblind. And this is your state organization that is going to provide equipment and devices for those who are deaf, hard of hearing, or deafblind. The types of equipment that they have, this is just a small amount of what they provide. They have your regular standard cordless phones, corded phones. They have phones that are Bluetooth capability, so the consumer can connect their cell phone. If they don't have a landline, they can connect their cell phone to that cordless phone. There's also one that has a little tablet with it. So depending on what type of device you are using, if you had Android or iOS, you would have a specific tablet, and that would then you could read captions across it. Again, there's a picture of the CapTel phone. They also provide a wireless program. And so that wireless program, you can get your iOS devices, Android devices, tablets, iPads. They also have a jitterbug, and they have cell phone amplifiers. So if somebody already has a really updated cell phone, they don't really need a new one, but they're just struggling to hear on it clearly, that cell phone amplifier can be an option as well. They have notification systems, so like a device that can plug into a lamp, like in the living room. So when your telephone rings, it will flash the lamp. There's other devices. They also have this home-aware smartphone device that is basically a bed shaker, alarm clock that will turn on your light, and it is also smartphone, capable. So lots of different devices, and it's not exhaustive like this list or the list that they have on their applications. It's not exhaustive. Joanne can get that person pretty much any device that that person needs within reason. You can go to the next slide. So how they qualify is they are on an income. While our services at Relay Colorado, you do not need, we do not go by income, they are free. The CTP does have an income requirement, and it is at 400% poverty level. So a lot of people, that's pretty good. That's a good percentage for Colorado, and a lot of people do qualify. You have to have a certification of hearing status that's verified by a doctor or an audiologist, a hearing instrument specialist, some other service professional to be able to sign that third-party form, qualification form. You do have to be a resident of Colorado, and again meet the 400% poverty level guidelines. What to expect when you do call is you would get and turn in that application is you would get a phone or an email assessment, and that's just a basic assessment to determine like where you're at, like what are you looking for, what are your needs. And then they do an in-person assessment, and that is because someone may say, someone may see me at an event, and they may say, oh, that CapTel phone is great and my mom needs that phone. But what they're not understanding is their mom may have some cognitive ability that is not going to allow them to understand how to use that CapTel phone very well or easily. And it might be very frustrating to that user, and which negates all the issues for, communication that child was hoping for. And so that in-person assessment really does hone in on what that individual really needs for their specific hearing loss or whatever. And so that in-person assessment is really needed. Then they do an equipment selection, they order it, and then they, and like it's on here, there's no defined list of equipment. If there's something special that's needed, Joanne is really trying to meet that person's needs. And then they do a training on it, which is definitely needed. Whether it's a cordless phone and it looks like a standard cordless phone, there are many options on that cordless phone. It could be your tone control, it could be your volume, it could be the boost button, it could be just getting into a new menu and saving phone for someone who really needs that phone number saved. There's lots, it could be even more technical because they're using a tablet or they're using something, a cell phone, where they need even more, training on those devices. And then there's ongoing training as well. And so the contact number for Joanne is right here. And she's, again, if you run into anyone who needs any information, you can go to the CTP's website. They have two applications. One is the wireless and one is the home devices, and you can look through those and see a lot more of the devices. Their images are on the application, and I would even print some out and maybe keep them in a file. If you have people coming into your office or whatever, you would be able to pull that up and be able to help them get to that CTP program pretty easily. So that's the CTP program.